Mhm.
Welcome to this week's episode of Be Your Greatest Asset podcast. It's a wellbeing podcast for mums in business and working mums who want to slow down time and who are so sick of life going a million miles an hour. And I'm really pleased today to introduce you to Anna Lundberg from One Step Outside. Today we're going to be talking about reimagining success, making work-life integration work for you. So Anna, hi, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's such a lovely thing to be here. And I know we share so much in terms of values and the kind of things that we think are important. So hopefully I know we'll have an interesting discussion today. Yeah, so I'm down in Poole. I know that you were living in Poole previously, so I've sort of taken up your place here on the south coast of England. I left my corporate marketing job back in 2013, so a decade ago now. And it was kind of always an accidental career, as I call it. I'd studied one thing, I'd ended up doing something different. So for me, there was always a bit of a disconnect. And so I ended up leaving without really having a plan at the time. And I traveled and I had some ideas and I kind of fell into consulting. I've been doing digital marketing in my role, and then ultimately discovered coaching, started integrating that. And so I've combined over the years I've reconciled, I suppose, the business and brand and marketing side on the one hand, on a more kind of mentoring, teaching, training element, with the newer topics that I've become passionate about from a more life coaching perspective, in terms of, as you said, defining what success looks like for you. What are your values, finding your purpose, this all elusive work-life balance, and so on. So One Step Outside is that business that I founded. So I'm helping experienced professionals design a business and a life that allows them to escape the 9 to 5, as I call it. And from a personal perspective, I initially did that because I just wanted the freedom, because I was young and single and wanted to travel. I wanted to do the digital nomad thing. And since then, I've been able to, both settle down in London, when I unfortunately met and fell in love with an Englishman who had a 9 to 5 job. So I kind of fell back into that structure. We then moved down to the coast. We've had our 2 little children. So now, of course, that balance and freedom means something different to me. It means that I can manage my business alongside the kids. And my daughter has just started school, so she's the oldest, and that's brought, as I'm sure you're familiar with, and everybody listening as well, if you have school-age children, a whole host of new obligations and requirements of things to keep on top of my mind, and so on. So it's an ongoing challenge, but I'm really glad that I have the freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment, as I talk about, that allows me to do that.
And that's the beauty, isn't it? That we think that we need to stay in a certain place, but we can actually reprioritize. Life is about a journey. It's like we have the freedom to keep redefining what things mean to us, don't we? Which is really amazing. And oh, your story resonates with me. Yes, lots of challenges. All the challenges are constantly changing as the children grow up, different chapters all the time. So let's talk about success then, because we had a little chat off record then about what success means. What does it mean to you?
Well, it's a really good question, and I always think I should have some perfect pithy little sentence, but I think how I came to the topic was, I think I'd been working on, or sort of moving on this conveyor belt or treadmill, whatever you want to call it. Hamster wheel, I suppose, is the classic cliche for the corporate life. But I feel like I was always the good girl at school, and I got the grades, and I became very dependent on external validation. And it was always, the next to going to a good university and getting a good job and so on. And, very privileged and amazing in so many ways. And yet there's this moment when you kind of wake up and go, hang on a second, is this it? What am I actually working towards? And I think you're either working towards someone else's definition of success, so parents, society in particular, in some cultures, obviously that can be more dominant than in others, or you just haven't really asked yourself that question. And so I began delving into that for my own selfish reasons, but in doing so, I opened up all sorts of ideas and concepts that then I've since sort of integrated into my coaching. So in a way, success for me is redefining success. And as you said, there are so many pivotal moments. And I think when I quit my job, I thought, ta-da, that's it. I've made my big courageous decision. and I'm going to live my best life and that's it. And of course, there were so many challenges, even in those initial weeks, months, years. That's a decade ago. Obviously, becoming a mother and many other changes along the way. Having a newborn is different to having toddlers, is different to having school age. We were talking about your children being a little older. Relationships bring challenges, romantic relationships. There's so many layers. And I think it's sort of, yeah, it is being able to keep evolving that definition, but always, not always, because that sounds like it's too much pressure, but checking in regularly to make sure that I'm still working towards a meaningful definition. And probably the definition is something pretty simple. In work, it's doing work I love to do, the way I want to do it. And then it's also being present, whatever I'm doing. If I'm at work, I want to be present and focused and engaged. If I'm with my kids, I want to be present with them. If I'm with my partner, and so on, right? So, and then of course you can throw in, I live by the sea, so I love to go for runs, and I'd love to do more paddleboarding and sailing and so on. I don't think that's sort of part of my definition of success, but there's definitely an element of that kind of holisticity and balance to it as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think I would say that is definitely part of success. Like for me, taking time off last week to spend with my husband because he was on leave in between jobs. He started his new job today. And just having that time to go off and do those things that I enjoy is creating that flexibility. To me, is success. That's
and I think the only thing is that I think when I first started my coaching journey, and certainly my background is, and I think this is something that a lot of my clients resonate, because we are those academic high performer, good girls, however you want to define it, is that you put so much pressure. And I loved goals, and my initial coaching was all around goals, and I had a bucket list and like how to write these long lists of things. And I think the danger is that I don't want to make paddleboarding and being present with my family into a tick the box achievement that I, what I mean? So it's much harder to have this, even, you talked about the more spiritual side. I wouldn't say I'm even in that territory, but it's it's a vaguer, more difficult to pin down thing, to be present and grounded and enjoy your way. It's not that you can just go, yep, tick, I've done that for today. It's a much more subtle, nuanced version. So I think it's much more meaningful, but it is harder than just going, right, I'm going to run a marathon, and I'm going to climb Mount Everest, and I'm going to earn this much money. Those are sort of more tangible, I guess you'd call them masculine energy goals. And I think this kind of softer presence is in a way harder due to the way we've grown up and kind of been educated and brainwashed, I suppose, into chasing these more tangible goals. Conditioned is a better word. Yes, thank you.
Talk about it's the flexibility to be in flow. If you want to talk about masculine and feminine, like be in flow and have that space to say, right, I want to go paddleboarding, I want to go for a walk, I want to do this, whatever. But yeah, amazing. It's really interesting that you used the term, is this it? Or the question, is this it? Because I've actually, this is the second podcast interview I've recorded today, and the same thing came up. It is a very real question that we mothers, well, people, but especially mothers, when we can lose a sense of identity, ask ourselves, like, we've got a career, you're used to being independent, you're used to being footloose and fancy free. How did you adjust then when the kids came along? How did you cope with that adjustment?
It's an interesting one, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it, and I'm kind of revisiting it now as well, because I think I suppose I'm kind of an older parent. I'm a geriatric mother, as they so lovely call it in the NHS.
I am as well.
And I had well, I mean, most of us are, and it's really a silly term, but fine, I'll take it. But I had, because I guess I met my partner late in life, and I quit my job, I guess I was 30, which is a midlife crisis in itself, or tertiary life crisis, whatever you want to call it. And I'd had really the most amazing years. I mean, I was speaking, I was paddleboarding down the Mississippi. I was traveling to wherever I felt like going. I was consulting and earning more than I'd been earning in my job, but I had the freedom. I was just literally living my best life. So on paper, it's easy to go like, oh my goodness, it would have been awful to suddenly lose all of that. On the other hand, I had that experience, so I didn't feel, I suppose if I had, there's never a right answer, but I think if I'd had children younger, I would have always wondered, what if, and I want to do all these things. So in a way, I'd kind of done them. Having said that, and also, to be honest, sort of the dreaded COVID happened also during my newborn years. So in a way, I was anyway kind of at home with little kids, so it didn't affect me. And, they kind of coincided quite well. But I have begun to, again, reflect on it this year. I was just saying to you again offline before we started recording that, my daughter started school, so she's 5 days a week. We've put my son, who's 3, into nursery 4 days a week. So it's more time than I've had in a long time to sort of focus on, I want to say me, because it's not just work, because I actually do a lot of, I'm working with a trainer and nutritionist, and I do run, and I'm playing tennis and racquetball, and I've got a pretty pace. You talk about slowing down time. I think maybe I've slowed it down too much now, and now I'm ready to speed things up again. Yeah. But I have had a few moments of thinking, wow, I was doing so many things for me then. And it's not that I want to go back to that by any means, but there are elements of that I would like to reintroduce. And I think it's very easy, and I speak for myself, to make excuses, say, oh, I can't be adventurous anymore because I've got kids. And that's a lot, because I've met people backpacking trips in years gone by who were traveling with their kids and so on. Now I choose not to do that. So it's pretty pathetic if I want to blame having children, because I know it's possible. And so it's much more for me to make time for the things that matter. And to do that, I need to know what those things are. And of course, the children are a big part of that. And there's also a piece for me about learning and growing, and yes, being active. And then of course, friendships are so vital. I'm in a reflective phase of thinking of, okay, what are the elements that I do want to kind of start reintroducing, I suppose, to not to now head off and travel for months, because that's not something I would do. We've built this lovely house. I've got this standing desk. I've got a view of the sea. I'm sort of, I'm very nicely rooted now, and I would like to add a little, sprinkling of more adventure and more of old Anna, if you will, previous Anna, independent Anna, whatever you want to call her, into the mix.
Brilliant. So that all sounds very exciting. And I love that you've identified that sometimes it's hard to know what it is that you want. So how are you going to identify what it is that you want now? Because I think that's something very.
This has become a very personal reflection on my own. Yes, on my own. I mean, I've got so many tools, and of course, this is the irony, as we said as well. We kind of coach other people on the things that we need help with, and I've got so many frameworks to help people do that. And I think, as we said, again, we do need to check in and do this from time to time, because I did so much of this work, getting clear on my values, reflecting on my purpose, my ikigai, and asking myself, I've got so many notebooks that are so interesting and sort of embarrassing, but also inspiring to look back on all these ideas I have, and that's really deep work that how far I've come, but also that's deep work that I suppose after many years in business, I haven't necessarily made space to ask these. You just kind of, I fell into a routine of doing and good business, as someone said to me recently, is quite boring. You need to kind of be consistent and show up and do the same thing over and over. But I don't really want it to be boring. So I'm, looking for ways to spark that up. So for me, it's revisiting some of these things, checking in again, okay, what are my values? I have a framework they call the 5 L's. So we've kind of danced on it a little bit, but it represents the areas of your life that I think need attention, I suppose, in order to have that balanced definition of success. So whenever in doubt, I always revisit those. And it's, can I go through it now? I think it's a good moment maybe to talk through the framework. Would that be okay? So I call it the 5 L's. I always love alliteration. It's live, love, learn, lead, love. And live is your health and well-being. So for me, the foundation has to be your health, and obviously through the lens of a mother who's not sleeping well and maybe not, taking care of herself as a first priority. That's been a big focus for me the last few years. And initially I did, I worked with a coach actually who was kind of very nurturing and didn't push me at all, but it was exactly what I needed to get from kind of, having just finished breastfeeding and feeling quite lumpy and not very attractive, I suppose, to getting into some form of self-care. And then I did kind of a 0 to 5K, a 5K to 10K, then a half marathon. And I've worked with a coach and trainer. Now I do much more, but that's obviously taken years. But that's one of my foundations. That's live. And then love is relationships and belonging. And it's not just your romance. Of course, the partner relationship can suffer as well when we have kids, but it's with your children, it's with with peers and colleagues and your community and family and all those relationships that are so important. The third L is learn. So I talked about, that kind of lifelong learning has always been a value for me, and really investing, as we do as coaches anyway, in our own personal development. So that's really big. I'm always doing a course or something, and I'm always reading and listening to podcasts and so on. Lead is the fourth L. So it is your work, but in the sense of impact and career, not just, doing work to sort of make money. Of course, that is a part of it, but really finding what is the deeper meaning for you and what's the legacy you kind of want to leave. And then the final L I find really hard, and it's the one that we as mums, I think, deprioritize, but it's laugh. It's fun and spontaneity. And it's, again, one of those things that's very hard to sort of set yourself goals in the area of fun. Sometimes you need to just block time in your calendar, make it sort of white space, because if it's empty, you quickly fill it with meetings and laundry and whatever, but it sort of almost needs to be a sacred space. As we said, it needs a bit of reflection. What do I find fun? Like, what's something that I do, not for the sake of being fit or, for the children, whatever it is, but something really, I've got friends who do like art classes, or, I used to play ukulele, and that's, it just lies there kind of sadly by my bed with the desire to pick it up again. But, it's finding something that you literally just do for yourself. And I think that is really the hardest struggle, because I'm so good at, and I'm sure your audience is too, like learning and reading and development and making an impact and growing the business, and even now good at the health and well-being piece and all these things. But I think the fun part, I sound really sad, but I think that's just the bit that, as much as I have fun throughout everything I do, that kind of pure fun that's almost just, the joy for the sake of it. That one I think is harder.
I agree. I completely agree. That's one of the things that comes up a lot with my clients, is I want to know how to have more fun. So I want to know how to prioritize my self-care, and I want to know how to have more fun, bring more joy into my life. Because we do forget, like, like our kids, they'll come to us with something really funny. They'll think it's the most hilarious thing. And we're like, oh no, not now. I'm busy doing the washing, or but actually, when we're in a calm state, when our nervous systems are calm, which is what I specialize in, a lot of the foundation of my work is calming and soothing the nervous system through holistic practices. We can actually look at the kids and go, oh yeah, that is really funny. And actually, because we're not feeling so uptight, it's, I would definitely agree that that's the hardest one.
But you're right, it's the pressure, and it's when your nerves are kind of, it's, oh, I want to get you to bed so that I get at least a little bit of time before, I have to go to bed, and it's, I've got to get you to school now in the morning. It's like, oh, I've got to do the laundry, it's just this constant. I found the school drop-offs now, because nursery has been super flexible. You can come earlier, later, it didn't matter. But now we've got the nursery drop-off, which is more flexible, and then the school, you've got this 10-minute window, a road where of course the parking is hell, and it's, I just find it very stressful. And then my daughter will start sort of drawing just as we're about to leave the house, or of course they don't want to put on the jacket, whatever it is. And it's very, as you said, the days that I'm kind of calm and balanced and I'm on top of things, it's fine. But unfortunately, it's taken some time to find that balance. And in that context, it's very hard then to make space for laughter and to enjoy the time you have together, which of course is so important. It's really the point of why bother otherwise, right? So we need to find a way to make it happen.
That comes, he'll fall it back to that, is this it question, isn't it?
Yes, is life just school drop-offs and
is it the Monday
sewing the nativity costume? I hope not.
Oh, you're in that mode at the moment, are you?
Yes.
Oh dear, you're not going to be mean like my mum. Bless her, she just sewed 2 towels together with some armholes. Tea towel.
Well, you say that, I feel like I might be, because like for some reason, and I'm not a sewer, although of course it's one of the many things I've done courses in over the time, but I just thought, I googled it, and there was a DIY get a pillowcase, and you can do all these things. With a mum chat now, it turns out everyone else is buying like a professional nativity costume from the department store. So I'm really worried that my daughter will be the only one in like a really hodgepodge pillowcase, but I'm sticking with it because I've invested my £1.50 in the pillowcase now. I've spent the time sewing it, so I'm going to go with it. I hope she won't be too traumatized.
Exactly. No, she'll realize the love that you've put into it. And
yes. Judging by the outfits she pulls together herself, I don't think she's going to have a problem with the very beautiful coordinated innkeeper's outfit that I've put together.
Well, I think it sounds brilliant. And this is part of life, isn't it? It's that societal pressure to suddenly pull a nativity play out of your bag or I don't know, like the school pressures of, let me give an example. harvest festivals, for example, where you're like, oh, I must remember the tins. Oh, I've left the tins at home. Or, oh no, I forgot. You know, there's just always a complete bombardment of things that you feel obliged to do, which is very detrimental to allowing you to feel successful and allowing you to feel like you're winning, and quite frankly, like you're good enough at anything. And I spent a long time feeling like I was failing, like completely failing in motherhood, in life, in business, just because I was you know, running around like a headless chicken, and just feeling like I wanted to slow time down. I was trying to backpedal, and yeah, it was just realizing that I need to have a complete look at my priorities, my values, like you've said, soothe my nervous system, basically build it back up again because it was a right old state. And yeah, just really look at what's important to me, and be true to myself without worrying so much about what people think. So does that come up in your coaching sessions, like people worrying about what people think, and does that affect their work-life balance at all, would you say?
Yes, I think, for example, in the transition of moving out of corporate and into working for yourself, there's a big loss of identity that I remember. You know, I'd been working for this big multinational. People at conferences wanted to talk to me because I was so and so from this company.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're nothing, and you're not nothing. You still have that same experience. And of course, actually now as an author, a podcast host, and so on, you can build up a new identity and credibility and so on. But that's a huge shift. And coming back again to what success is, if success for you is climbing the linear corporate career ladder, you know, earning more and more, getting promoted and so on, then of course leaving that behind is failure. If success is, for example, you know, learning, growing as an individual, exploring things, not having regrets, being more present with your kids and so on, then obviously staying in that job could actually be seen as a failure. And it's just kind of shifting how we think about things. But unfortunately, again, as I said, that's an initial decision, and we worry about, oh gosh, what will all my, you know, colleagues and friends think? And people do tend to initially say, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're quitting your incredible job, whatever.
Yeah.
But when they see you succeed and thrive and have lots of flexibility and be able to travel and be with your family and so on, they begin to see the light, I think, as well. And, you know, they're just simply projecting their own fears and concerns. So I think that's definitely something that my singing teacher used to say, that our biggest fear as human beings is sort of fear of being humiliated in a way. You know, we just so worry that what will people think if I put out this video, and, you know, if I'm posting this, you know, who am I to, and all these thoughts, they don't ever go completely away, especially as you're always raising the bar. Things that for me were completely like outrageous a decade ago now are part of my routine. But now, of course, I'm moving into it. I'm you know, leveling up and I want to do other things, and that immediately becomes quite terrifying again. So, you know,
you're evolving, and that's what's supposed to happen in life, isn't it? It's a journey, it's a process. And I think it doesn't matter where you are in life either. I mean, I've met such highly successful businesswomen, like, you know, multi-figure businesses, millionaire businesses, and then, you know, people like me who aren't earning so much, but I'm just like so happy to have so much flexibility in my life. And that, you know, because it means different for everybody. But what's really interesting is you can sit in a room of people who are all on different levels of the ladder, on different, you know, like levels of income and everything, and yet they all share the same fears at different points, and it's always the same things that come up. Yeah, like worrying about, oh, do I look all right? Am I what are they going to think about me? And yeah, that's interesting.
The good news, of course, is that nobody has time to think about you because they're so busy thinking about themselves. That's the insight to remember always, right? So nobody will, you know, I've got so many people in my community who worry about marketing and, oh, it feels so icky and sleazy, and I've repeated the message too many times and I can't talk about myself. Nobody's paying attention. Literally nobody cares. Like, if they are paying attention, it's because they're interested and they want what you have, and, you know, they're going to want to work with you. So it's just, I think in a way we're so egotistical to think that people are going to be sitting there, oh my goodness, I can't believe Anna's putting out a third video this week. And, you know, if they are, then good for them. They've obviously got a little bit too much time on their hands. So, you know, I say that in a joking way. Of course, it's hard, especially when you're starting, but I think we just have to kind of, we don't have to, but we can choose to just be true to ourselves and try things out, and recognize that, you know what, probably nobody apart from a mum or, you know, a very good friend is going to notice, and they'll be very supportive anyway. So
yeah, is it 21 or 28 times that somebody has to
yes,
like actually see you
there's,
before they actually
so many touch points
notice
that people
you?
have to see. Exactly
Yeah.
that. So actually you're not going to do enough. And, you know, there's all these people who say, actually, if someone unsubscribes from your email because you're sending too many sales emails, they weren't going to buy anyway, right? So there's always this balance. I mean, I tend to, as I'm sure you do, lean into like giving so much value and so on, and a lot of more spiritual and holistic and well-meaning and passionate, mission-driven entrepreneurs do that. But we have to, you know, it's not a hobby. As much as we value the freedom and flexibility, we also want to and need to earn a living.
Money.
And so, you know, I do think we need to have that kind of business hat on as well.
Well,
I don't think people like us are ever going to be too salesy. If anything, everyone's always going to err on the side of being too gentle with it. So
absolutely. But then, you know, and the other side of that is if we're giving everything away for free all the time, and then we're actually not doing anyone any favors, especially not ourselves, not our children, but not even our clients or potential clients, because we're just going to run empty, and then we won't be there for anybody. We'll burn out.
no, and there's so many reasons why that doesn't work, right? First of all, exactly as you say, if you're not earning a living and you're burnt out and so on, your business is going to fail and you're not going to be able to help anybody. So there's no point in that. Secondly, if you're just, you know, giving everything away and it's all free and completely overwhelming to people, then they're not going to be able to make the most of the information either. In fact, information, especially now in the age of AI and having, you know, ChatGPT can give you I can say like, what are 10 strategies to market my business on Instagram? And boom, it's going to give me that information. We don't need more information. We need mentoring. We need tailored feedback. We need, you know, support and cheerleading, and you know, that we need implementation support and accountability. We don't need information. So
time to
yeah,
process
if
the
anything, we
information.
can pull back. Exactly. Yeah, we need time. If anybody can create more time, I think they'll have a good business going there.
Yeah, definitely. I think the cheerleading one is a very big one for me. I am big advocate of cheering everyone on and like supporting, and you know, bringing together people, bringing people together even in community, which is really good. I feel like we can hold each other accountable. You're more likely to succeed, I think.
So just, I mean, it's a whole different topic, so I don't want to sort of go on too much of a tangent, but I'm, of course, because I'm always learning, I'm doing an organizational psychology course at the moment that I need to quickly finish before the end of the year because then it expires. But what I found really interesting and eye-opening is all these things about companies and employers thinking about well-being and leadership and so on, all our human needs that need to be met. We just forget about that when we're working for ourselves. And these human needs of social engagement and peer support and rewards and recognition and accountability, it's a lot to put on ourselves as a solopreneur to provide all those things. You know, we're our own boss and colleague and mentor. It just doesn't work. So I think, you know, whether it's a free mastermind or a group, you know, a Facebook group or an in-person, you know, community, whatever, like there are so many elements that we, again, I don't want to put pressure on ourselves, but like could put in place to support ourselves much better. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to succeed suddenly by ourselves, you know, compared to when I was in corporate. I had, obviously there was a sales team, I had a manager, there was a whole, you know, factory and plant team, there were, you know, there was decades of marketing experience to support me and mentors and colleagues and so on. And suddenly, whoop, all that's gone, and we think we need to do everything ourselves. It's madness, actually, if we think about it. So, you know, I think sometimes we just put far too much pressure on ourselves to start from scratch and recreate everything, and it's just not necessary, and it's not failure to ask for help. You know, it's needed.
Absolutely, yeah. Always ask for help. Definitely not a failure. Always learning. I don't believe in failure. I believe that everything is a lesson. So if you do jump off the corporate ladder and realize that self-employment or solopreneurship isn't for you, then it's a lesson. It's not a failure.
Well, no, and we love, again, you know, my first book was a collection of stories of people who left the corporate 9 to 5, as I call it, and several of those I know have gone back to a job, and either it's temporary and then they move on again, or maybe not, but either way they've had an amazing experience and they have decided with intention, no, actually I do want to have a job in that community, and as long as that's made, you know, with your eyes open and really having given the entrepreneurship a good go. What I find sad is when people, like we just said now, haven't ask for help. They've just kind of thought that they were going to have an incredibly successful thing, and when it doesn't happen right away, they've gone and run back to corporate. I think that's a shame, but generally, absolutely, it's not a failure. I know, again, we probably think, oh no, what will people think if they see that I'm going to a job? Who cares? We have to kind of go, look, this is my life.
Exactly.
No one's going to care. And I'm making a decision that right now my family needs a stable income, or right now I just want something that kind of pays the bills to kind of ground myself again and then move on, you know. So absolutely, I think there's so many pivotal moments, and certainly I never want to in any way push people and say that there's only one way. If anything, my whole concept is that there are different versions of success. And for me, I happen to think that working for myself has been an incredible way to live that reality, but it doesn't mean, and I know it doesn't represent the best thing for everybody, right? So it's about finding what that looks like for you at different points in your life as well.
Yeah, different chapters. And everyone's got their own journey. That's the thing. It's, you know, what feels good to one doesn't feel good to another. Like, we do not fit in one box as much as people like to think we do, or we should.
Social media likes to tell us. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've talked about your 5 L's. Are there any other strategies you want to share at all, or would you like to move on?
I mean, there are many, but I don't want to overwhelm people. I think the 5 L's is more just a reminder of kind of the different things that matter. I think that can be a valuable prompt. I mean, when we're talking about business, I have my 5 pillars framework, and just, you know, to briefly touch on that, just to again reiterate what we've been saying. The first one is getting super clear on what success means to you. So that's what we've been talking about most of the conversation. Second one is developing your confidence and resilience, because we know we've all seen that kind of roller coaster image of working for yourself. So, you know, we talked again about it, self-care, the support networks, and so on, so important. Then for me, more tangibly, the third pillar is really having the right business model in place. Fourth pillar is building your personal brand, which I'm very passionate about, having been in marketing myself. And then the fifth pillar is, again, what we've been talking about, work-life integration. So it's just, again, don't feel overwhelmed by all these things you suddenly have to do, but it's just illustrating that it's much more nuanced again. You know, having a clear vision, having the mindset, yes, having the business model, having the priorities, and so on. You know, there's a lot of things to kind of consider. And just like with the 5 L's, it's not about having like a 10 out of 10 on everything all the time, because we can't do that. But if you think of that, you know, I saw we went to like a circus thing earlier in the year, and this girl was spinning the plates, you know, on the poles. And it was such a good metaphor, of course, for, you know, when you first spin it, you have to get the momentum going, you have to give it attention and focus and really concentrate. But once it's spinning, you can leave it a little bit to spin on its own while you go and, you know, put your attention elsewhere. So I think, like my health, for example, once I've gotten into a good routine of running several times a week and eating healthily, I can kind of, okay, that's happening now. For me, if I want to, let's say you want to increase the income, or, you know, become more visible in your business, suddenly that requires a bit more energy, and, oh, I'm not sure what to do, and maybe work with a mentor or join a program or whatever, while the rest kind of ticks along. And it's just kind of, yeah, it's quite fluid. It's sort of going where you want to add something new or grow, and then not leaving that other plate for too long, because it'll fall crashing to the ground. So it's just remembering that you have to now and then just come and give a little spin to keep it going. But I think that's quite a good, you know, there's so many, as we said, again, coming back to motherhood, so many things to think about. Adding business to it all as well is just a whole another bunch of things we need to do or feel we need to do. So we really have to, even I feel like, you know, I feel my shoulders tensing just thinking about it, and I'm talking quickly because there's so much, you know. So just as you said, you know, your nervous system and calming that, and
you know, amazing,
centering yourself, grounding yourself, going for a walk.
Love that plate spinning analogy. That's brilliant. So Anna, would you like to share your free gift with our listeners?
So hopefully the 5 L's model, you know, if it is interesting to you, maybe you're at a moment when you go, I don't know what's next, either in the business or if you're in corporate. And, you know, again, it's not about quitting a job or anything. This is very much just rethinking, looking at the kind of possibly neglected areas in your life. If you go to onestepoutside.com/success, onestepoutside.com/success, and it's a PDF, it's like a little assessment, quite an easy, you know, tick the box kind of thing. And then you can just give yourself a little score. And what I would say with all these scores is, you know, it's not a scorecard from school. It's not like a right or wrong. Again, with the spinning plate, sometimes we can choose to pull back from a particular area because, you know, right now is not as a mother told me a few years ago, maybe it's not the time for us to hustle when we've just had a baby and, you know, we're not sleeping. It's not the time when we're going to be on the TED stage and writing books and whatever. So as long as you're making, I think, intentional choices, I think, is a really key thing. So I can choose to deprioritize a particular area, but not for too long, because that's when, you know, your health can suffer, your relationship with your partner might suffer, and so on, you know. So it's just hopefully giving you a little nudge to remind yourself of some things that perhaps have been neglected for a little bit.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, so people can find that. And yeah, I think for me, simplicity, keeping things simple. Like the more simple they are, like you introduce them, they become habit, and then you can start to introduce something else. So it's like sustainable change, and it's always worked well for me. Yeah, so would you like to share any last words of wisdom before we say cheerio today?
I think the simplicity one is interesting. I think especially for me, having been in business for so long, it's very diluted, because I was kind of traveling initially, and then I was, you know, I've had children and it's been COVID, so it's not like I've been like every day. But I have kind of the business has become quite complex. I think simplicity is a good reminder. My business name is One Step Outside, and it comes from the quote, "Everything you've ever wanted is one step outside your comfort zone." And, you know, we've talked a lot about growing and so on, but the key for me is the one step. And I'm reminding myself again, as much as you all listening, it doesn't have to be a huge leap. We tend to think in these really binary terms of either I'm over here stressed and struggling and failing, or over there living my best life. Yeah. Either I'm in this soul destroying corporate job, or I'm, you know, a hugely successful entrepreneur, whatever. And there's just so many steps in between. I think there are two ways of getting to where you want to be. One is to bring elements of that dream into today, and the other is to take little steps in that direction, you know, and it is just breaking it down. Start with something today, and then, you know, over time, it's going to add up. We talked about, you know, your podcast interviews. It seems completely overwhelming to go, I want to do 100 episodes or 500 episodes, but, you know, you do 1, you do 10, you do 50 before you know it, you know.
Just plod along, don't you?
Months
With
have passed.
intention.
Yeah.
That's the
Plod
thing.
along with intention. Let's get that printed on t-shirts, I think. Yes, I like it. It's not so sexy, is it? But it's, you know, a bit of plodding along is actually not a bad thing, I think. So yeah, the one step, I think, is the key thing to remember. Don't you know, don't push yourself to do too much too soon.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And
thank you, Michelle, for prompting me as well. Lots of self-reflection today for me as well. So appreciate it.
Well, that's what it's all about,
to what the new year will bring.
Inspiring each other, celebrating each other, supporting each other. So together we thrive.
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Anna.